Hello there, welcome back to the final session in the Lament course. This is session 8 and it's called Perception. So last time we were exploring this sense that you can be cleansed and made right and start again. The narrator, despite this kind of metaphor of adultery, calls Jerusalem virgin, daughter, Zion. It's this sense that the pain and the trauma doesn't have to be the last word about you. You don't have to stay there or be stuck there because Jesus always has a better word. And that's certainly been my experience and the experience of lots of people that I've walked with, that as they've gone through this process and taken on board some of the things I've been sharing, they've been able to come to a different place. But they've also had to do what I'm going to talk about today, a change in their perception. Because in order to move from that place of pain and trauma into a new place, yes, you've got to lament it and see it and not deny it and use metaphor and speak it and understand it, but you also have to move to a different place. And in order for that to happen, we've got to get a right perspective, because often pain mars our view. And in the middle of Lamentations, we read these words of this person, of the writer, clearly stuck in the pain. This is chapter 3, verses 1 to 5. I am the one who has seen affliction by the rod of the Lord's wrath. He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his hand against me again and again all day long. He has made my skin and my flesh grow old and has broken my bones. He has besieged me and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. He has made me dwell in darkness like those long dead. Wow, this guy's having a bad day. And it seems from what he's writing that he's pinning all of it on God. He believes God's against him, that God is the cause of his problems. Listen to the feelings of entrapment and fear that he blames on God. He has walled me in so I cannot escape. He has weighed me down with chains. Even when I call out or cry for help, he shuts out my prayer. He has barred my way with blocks of stone and made my paths crooked. Like a bear lying in wait, like a lion in hiding, he dragged me from the path and mangled me and left me without help. Now this is where lots of us end up, feeling extremely low, trapped, fearful, and blaming God for what's gone on. And the emotional state of the writer is a reality. And it's horrific when you're in the place like that, when life feels like that, when you feel trapped and walled in and weighed down with your way blocked, like you're dragged from a path and mangled and left without help. Lots of us have felt like that. But this writer right now, he has linked where he's at with God as though God was somehow something to do with it. But that's nonsense. Because God wasn't the cause of his pain. God has not driven him away and made him walk in darkness rather than light. That's the opposite of what God wants. God has not made his skin and flesh grow old and broken his bones. God has not made him dwell in darkness like those long dead. I mean, God is light. How could God make somebody dwell in darkness when God is light? Is God really like a bear lying in wait and a lion in hiding, waiting to drag you from the path and mangle you and leave you without help? This is why our view of God is so important to the lamenting process. Because the writer has equated all their pain as coming from God, but that's an impossibility. There's nothing in the heart of God that wants to cause you pain, and he's done everything possible to bring the exact opposite about. But the issue right here is in how the writer thinks. But watch what happens just a few verses later when they choose to see a different perspective. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I will remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him. Wow. That's some turnaround in the space of a few verses. But listen to what makes the difference. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. So the writer, he kind of expresses it, and in a way, these few verses of chapter 3 are like a brilliant expose of what lamenting is. It's like, this is how I feel, this is what's going on, this is the reality. There's no denial going on here. There's a very real sense, there's lots of metaphor, and there's lots of depth in terms of this is how it feels, and this is what it's like, and this is what's going on. But here's the key. The key to lament is not just getting out how rubbish it is, it's also calling to mind something different, so that therefore you will have hope. You see, there's an acknowledgement of the reality of the pain, but then there's an acknowledgement of the greater reality of the love of the Father. And one of the keys in dealing with our pain is choosing what we believe about God, ourselves, and the world around us. You see, up to that point where he says, yet this I call to mind, he could have carried on and on and on and on and on and on and on about how terrible it was and how this was happening and that was happening. But he goes, no, something happens in him. And he goes, okay, this is all true, but this I call to mind. Notice as well, God doesn't call the things to mind. His friends didn't call anything to mind. He says, I called to mind. He took responsibility for his thoughts, and he took responsibility for where he was at, and he went, no. Okay, this is how I feel, but what do I know? What am I assured of? What has God told me is true? He took responsibility for his own thoughts and beliefs and called the truth to mind. You see, this is key. You are not shaped as much by your environment as you are by your perception of your environment. You are not shaped as much by your environment as you are by your perception of your environment. In other words, it's not what goes on around you or even how you feel about what goes on around you, but what you think goes on around you. Now, you and I could go somewhere and listen to exactly the same talk and then go for exactly the same meal and then go for exactly the same walk and come back with completely different versions about what happened. I might think it was the most wonderful day ever, and you might think it was the most terrible day ever. Even though externally everything's the same, because it's not about what actually goes on around you, it's about how you think about what goes on around you. Your thought life determines your emotions, and for many of us, our emotions are a key player in what we choose to do and therefore our behaviour. And if what we think does not reflect truth, then what we feel does not reflect reality. If what we think does not reflect truth, according to the Word of God, then what you feel does not reflect reality. See, a lot of the time we get into trouble because we go on our feelings, but our feelings are often not reality. They're how we feel at a particular time about a particular moment. And when we're tired, or we're hungry, or we're hormonal, or all those, they all make a massive difference to how we feel. But there is a truth, a wonderful, beautiful truth, that is a rock solid foundation. And when you start to base your thought life on the truth, it affects everything. I said in one of the earlier sessions that lamenting is a two-part process. First, you have to understand what's been lost, but once you've done that, you must do something with it, because if not, you'll just spiral. That process involves recall and it involves perception. You have it in your power to change your perception. Once you've lamented and worked out how you feel and why you feel that way, then the way forward is to change that perception of it. Okay, this is the reality, this is how I feel. Okay, right there, that is your moment to go, so what am I going to do about it? Am I just going to go tell everybody I know about this situation, how terrible it is? And probably embellish it a little bit along the way, because, we want to make sure everybody knows just how terrible life is. Well, that's probably unwise. It's probably only good to share those things with a few close people, and people who are willing to tell you when to show up, because you've been on a bit too long now, and what we're actually going to do about it. But there becomes a moment when you have to go, okay, what am I going to call to mind? And of course, you might not be in a place where you know enough about Jesus or enough about his love for you to call it to mind, but hopefully you know somebody who can help you call it to mind. Somebody who can go, and that's not suggesting that they're going to minimise or wipe over. Hopefully, if you've listened to the last 7 sessions, you'll understand I am not advocating that at all. But there is a moment where you go, okay, we understand. It's difficult, it's awful, it's horrific. where we're going from here. Because if I can call to mind something different, if I can gain a different perception, if I can see a different reality, then I can move forward. You have it in your power to change your perception. Once you've lamented and worked out how you feel and why you feel that way, then the way forward is to talk to Jesus about it. However that works for you. And there's a million ways to do that. You have to find out what it means for you to give it to Jesus. We talk about this a lot in the church and nobody really understands what it means. We just go, oh, you've got to give it to Jesus. What does that mean? Well, what it means for me means writing it down by hand in a journal. It means writing it, and then it means saying it, and it means going, God, and then I shut my journal and I'm like, right, God, I've given it to you now. And if I don't feel any different, I just keep reading it and I keep saying it and I keep telling him he's got it and I keep giving it away. For you, it might mean writing a letter and sending it to a friend. It might mean writing it and burning it. It might mean drawing a picture. It might mean writing a song. It might mean going onto the moors and shouting at the top of your voice. It might mean writing a poem about it. I don't know. But you've got to find, what is it for me that means I can say, God, this thing that's battling me, I want a new perception and I want to give it to you. Lamenting is a fabulous process. It's the process I have found that allows me to process the grief and the pain of life and find something different. And I hope you've gained something from these last 8 weeks and these last 8 sessions of watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me and for taking the time to listen. And lots of love from me.